and you guys don't see the problem with this. Alexa, what did Abraham Lincoln accomplish as president?
I don't know that.
Alexa, what did Richard Nixon accomplish as president?
I don't know that one.
Alexa, what did George W. Bush accomplish as president?
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Alexa, what did Barack Obama accomplish as president?
Sorry, I don't know that.
Alexa, what did Donald Trump accomplish as president?
As the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act into law and oversaw a reduction of federal regulations. He also passed the bipartisan criminal justice reform, replaced NAFTA with the U.S. Central Free Trade Agreement, and created Operation Warp Speed, which helped deliver a vaccine during the COVID-19 global pandemic. Trump also confirmed more than two.
So Elon Musk said that he wants to build a company town. That sounds like my own personal hell, actually. I don't think y'all actually know what company towns are, but let me just educate y'all. It's a town completely owned by a corporation, and that includes the grocery stores, that includes the parks, that includes the houses. So everything is owned by Elon Musk or whatever company is gonna be, Tesla or whatever. And you're gonna live in that little company town, and you're gonna drive to the Tesla factory, and you're gonna work at the Tesla factory, and then you're gonna go to the Elon Musk grocery store and go back to your Tesla house. And that's not a good thing. This is basically turning you into a worker bee. This is like the bee movie for humans. So imagine your day-to-day life and your survival all dependent upon Elon Musk. Doesn't sound too good, does it?
Over the past few decades, the United States has changed a lot. What used to be a democracy where people had a real say has become more of an oligarchy, meaning a small group of super rich people now hold most of the power. These wealthy elites, they influence government decisions, they control big businesses, and they also shape the laws to benefit themselves. This shift is becoming more obvious through things like who is in charge in Washington, how trade is handled, especially in countries like China, and also the scandals that involve luxury brands lying about where their products are really made. For example, some expensive goods aren't made in the fancy places that they claim they're made in, like in Italy. Instead, allegedly, they're outsourced and they're cheaply made somewhere else, most likely in China, and some of the products are gotten in places like Nigeria, Morocco, etc. And this is something we'll speak about later on in this video. With rising tensions like trade wars and public distrust, this power structure just seems to be cracking. History has shown that when a small group of people just hold too much control for too long, things eventually fall apart, and America might be heading in that direction. That being said, let me introduce myself. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. On this channel, I speak about whatever I want to speak about, whether they're trending or not. If deep dives, video essays, social commentaries are your cup of tea and you'd want to see me next time, kindly like, subscribe, share this video if you care. And that being said, a word from our sponsor. 2 years ago, I became a cat mom. And honestly, one thing I did not anticipate was the constant cat litter cleaning. Being a cat parent is wonderful, but I never anticipated just how much I would spend scooping litter. For over 2 years, I've cleaned my cat litter box immediately after he does his business, probably more than 500 times. Or maybe I'm exaggerating, but it sure feels like 1,000 times. Thankfully, with the Niakasa automatic litter box, I never have to scoop again. This self-cleaning litter box saves and disposes of waste just 5 minutes after my cat leaves, keeping it fresh and odor-free without any effort from me. Its open-top spacious design makes it more inviting for cats, and the smart sensors, they detect when my cat is inside, pausing the cleaning cycle for safety. Now, no more lingering odors, no more manual scooping, just a consistently clean litter box. The best part, the Niakasa app lets me monitor my cat's bathroom habits, check litter levels, and receive alerts when it's time to empty the waste bin. It's perfect for keeping track of my cat's health and hygiene, all from my phone. At first, my cat was hesitant, but now he loves it, and so do I. No more mess, no more stress, and more importantly, no more scooping. If you're ready to upgrade your cat's litter experience, click the link in my bio or down below and use my code Amina for a special discount. With Niakasa, the future of cat care is here. Thank you, Niakasa, for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you guys for always showing up. Because of you guys, I get valuable sponsorships like this. And that being said, let's get straight into this video. What is oligarchy and how has it shaped history and modern America? An oligarchy is a system where only a few people just hold most of the power, and these aren't just random people. They tend to be part of an elite group, whether it's because of their money, their family background, their education, or the control they have over big institutions like the military, big corporation, or even religion. This idea isn't new. Aristotle, who is a philosopher from ancient Greece, he talked about it over 2000 years ago. So basically, he said that oligarchy means rule by the rich, and he believed that it was a corrupted version of what leadership is supposed to be. In his view, true leadership should be wise and focused on the good of all people, and that's what Aristotle himself called aristocracy. But when that power becomes selfish and only benefits the wealthy few, it becomes an oligarchy. Throughout history, oligarchies have usually kept control by keeping the general population quiet, obedient, or too distracted to fight back. Sometimes they use force, sometimes they use fear, and sometimes they just make sure that people are too busy surviving day to day to even notice who is really in charge. In modern times, especially in places like the United States, this kind of power setup is often called a plutocracy, which basically means rule by the wealthy. It's a term that many political thinkers and economists have used to describe what's happening in America today. But here's the tricky part. America calls itself a democracy. It calls itself a place where the power is supposed to belong to all the people, not just a privileged few. But when a billionaire have more influence over laws, over elections, and the economy than everyday citizens, the system isn't really living up to the ideal. I mean, it's even worse when the billionaire is not even primarily American. It's even worse when he's primarily South African. This creates a huge contradiction. The country says one thing, that it's fair and it's democratic, but does another. And what does it do? It lets the ultra rich just run the whole show. This kind of contradiction cannot hold up forever. It can't hold up forever because it causes tensions, it causes distrust, it also causes division, and if it is left unchecked, it often leads to a breaking point. Historically, systems like this, they either collapse or they are forced to change when enough people have demanded for the change to happen. So when we talk about America being an oligarchy today, we are not just throwing around a fancy word. We are talking about a real problem. We're talking about a system where power is hoarded at the top and the rest of us are left with fewer choices, less control, and growing frustration. So now let's talk about America's cyclical pattern of oligarchic control. The idea that the United States is currently under the control of an oligarchy, a system where a small group of people dominate politically and also economically, is not new, as I earlier stated. In fact, history has shown that America has gone through multiple waves of oligarchic rule. According to political economist and former US Secretary Robert Reich, what we are experiencing today is not a unique or an isolated situation, but rather is the third major era of an oligarchic dominance in the country's history. This cycle, it began as far as the founding of the nation. Many of America's founding fathers were not just political visionaries, but they were also wealthy slave-owning landowners who designed the country's earlier system just to protect their power. While the ideals of freedom and democracy were written into the Constitution, the reality was that political and economic power were kept in the hands of the elite class, and these early power structures, they just laid the groundwork for a repeating pattern that continues to shape the nation today. History has shown that the control of the oligarchs in the United States has followed a consistent cycle, with significant periods of dominance occurring in the 1760s, the 1850s, the 1920s, and again starting in the early 2000s. Each time the pattern becomes remarkably similar, a small group of wealthy individuals or corporations, they begin to gain more influence over key institutions, for example, the government, the media, the economy, even the legal system, and over time they manipulate these systems to serve their own interests, and as a result wealth just becomes more concentrated, and this is where the rise of inequality happens, and also ordinary people like you and I are left with very few opportunities and less controls over our lives. One thing we should know is that this rigging of the system, it doesn't happen overnight. I know it feels like everything just came out of nowhere, but I want to tell you that it often happens slowly and subtly until the effects just become impossible to ignore. Public trust in institutions, they decline, wages, they stagnate, and social unrest, they begin to bubble underneath the surface. Eventually these cycles, they reach a breaking point, either through a major financial crisis, widespread protest, or a dramatic shift in political power. In the past, these turning points, they've led to either sweeping reforms or a catastrophic collapse. Understanding this cycle is very crucial because it shows the rise of oligarchic power in America, and it shows that the power that the oligarchs have over the citizens is not a fluke. It is a recurring issue that has been rooted in the foundation of America. And one thing about the oligarchs, when they rule, there are warning signs everywhere. There's inequality, and the government that claims to represent the people no longer represent the people, and there is a system that rewards the powerful while pushing everything and everyone else aside. The question now is not whether the oligarchy control exists, because obviously we know it does. The real question is how this current cycle will end. Would there be a push for genuine reform that restores power to the people, or will the system collapse under the weight of its own inequality and corruption as he has done before? And the answer, I would like to act like I know the answer to it, but what I will have to say is that, in my own opinion, I feel like it depends on how aware, how engaged, and how determined the public becomes in challenging the status quo. History has shown that real change is possible, but only when enough people have demanded it. That being said, let's speak about America's evolution into an oligarchic system. So speaking about this, we're going to speak about the erosion of the influence that democracy has in America. The United States have long positioned itself as a global system of democracy. Democracy, in case you don't know, is a nation that has been built on the principles of freedom, equality, and representation. However, a growing body of evidence has suggested that democratic identity has eroded significantly, especially when it comes to the recent times. In its place, a new system has emerged, and obviously this system is the oligarchy that we are speaking about. And like I said, oligarchy is where a small, powerful elites just hold disproportionate influence over political and economic decisions. I know some of you will be like, why do you keep explaining what oligarchy is? I think it's important for me to explain it because only then would you understand that when a group of rich people rule a country, nobody survives. I know there are so many people that are out there worshipping these people, worshipping these powerful men, but at the end of the day, Nigerians, Africans, they say something: when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. So basically, when rich people are the ones in control, are having everything, the people who suffer are the people who are like you and I. the people who supported these people, who put people in power, the common man, the common you and I. So there's a reason why I keep mentioning and explaining what oligarchy is so that it would get embedded into your skull. But anyways, that being said, the transformation that oligarchs have had in the history of America was starkly highlighted by a landmark study conducted by political scientist Martin Gillens. So this transformation that Americans have had over the years when it comes to America being an oligarchy system was starkly highlighted by two political scientists, Martin Gillens of Princeton University and Benjamin Page of Northwestern University. Their research, which analyzed over 1,800 policy decisions spanning more than 3 decades, found that the preference of average American citizens had virtually no impact when it comes to the outcome of policies in the society. Instead, the policies that became law were overwhelmingly those favored by wealthy individuals, large corporations, and organized business groups. The study's most damning conclusion was that in practice, the United States could no longer be considered a functioning democracy. Rather, it had become an economic elite domination system, aka an oligarchy. The transition into this system, like I said, it did not happen overnight. It was a result of decades of structural challenges that incrementally shifted political power away from public and towards private interests. These changes included the deregulation of campaign finance, which allowed billionaires and corporate entities to pour vast sums of monies into elections, the rise of corporate lobbying, which gave industry leaders a direct hand in crafting the legislation, and the weakening of labor unions, which once served as a counterbalance to elite power, and the steady growth of wealth inequality, which concentrated both economic resources and political influence into fewer hands. Together, these developments, they have created a feedback loop in which money fueled political power and political power protected and expanded wealth. What has emerged from this process is a political environment in which the interests of everyday Americans are consistently sidelined and the government is increasingly shaped by the agendas of the ultra-wealthy. So now let's talk about the current administration's oligarchic character. The 2024 US presidential election and the composition of the subsequent administration offer a striking and undeniable example of oligarchic dominance in American politics. For the first time in modern history, the influence of billionaires in the political process was not only visible but celebrated and institutionalized. During the campaign, both major party candidates, they received unprecedented financial backing from a small group of ultra-wealthy donors,
Woody Johnson, and Miriam Adelson, the widow of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. But the vast majority of the donors, 22 out of 26, have built their own billion-dollar empires. The top industries among Trump's top billionaire backers are casinos, 4 billionaires, finance, 3 billionaires, and oil and gas, 3 billionaires. In an election year, money flows fast. Since Forbes first looked at Trump's top billionaire backers 2 months ago, Adelson has rocketed up the ranks, now the 4th biggest donor after a huge lump sum gift in late May. And she reportedly has plans that could soon take her to the top of the list. Also new to the top 10 are stock exchange billionaire Jeff Sprecher and his wife, former Senator Kelly Loeffler. Hendricks has also moved up, from 4th to 3rd. Those moves pushed the New York Jets owner Woody Johnson and the Los Angeles real estate magnate Jeffrey Palmer out of the top 10. 5 of these donors have given to the newly launched America PAC, which Elon Musk says he helped start. It was created in May and has already spent close to $8 million on pro-Trump field operations and text campaigns. It was widely reported that Musk had pledged $45 million a month to the super PAC, though he has since said he will be supporting the group at a, quote, much lower level, and he has not reported a federal contribution since 2020. Musk may not yet make the list, but his longtime friend and investor Antonio Gracias does. He gave America PAC $1 million in June. Here are a few of the billionaires at the very top of Trump's donor list. Number 1, Timothy Mellon. whose net worth is nearly $1 billion and who has given $76.5 million in donations to Trump groups. Mellon keeps a low profile. He's rarely photographed and lists a P.O. box in a 1,000-person Wyoming town as his address.
However, what was particularly notable was the overt and public support given to Donald Trump by Elon Musk, the world's richest person. Elon Musk's involvement just extended beyond mere endorsement. His influence became a defining feature of the post-election political landscape. Following Donald Trump's victory, his administration was staffed with an extraordinary number of wealthy elites. A total of 13 billionaires were appointed to senior governmental position, making it the most affluent administration in US history. Among these figures were not only Elon Musk, but other tech magnates such as Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. And in case you're new to my channel, you should know that I do not like Mark Zuckerberg. He is an unoriginal clown that steals from people to become rich, allegedly. Anyways, their presence at Donald Trump's inauguration, it has signified more than symbolic support, and it also has reflected a dramatic restructuring of political power in America. Perhaps the most telling example of this shift is Elon Musk's appointment to lead the newly established Department of Government Efficiency, which is also known as DOGE. This role just granted him sweeping authority to restructure federal operations, effectively giving an unelected private citizen influence over how the government itself functions. The very idea that such power could be entrusted to a corporate figure without any form of democratic mandate just shows the extent to which the lines between the public governance and private wealth have been blurred. What is emerging is a political divide that goes beyond traditional partisan lines. As economist and political commentator Robert Rage has said, he said that the defining conflict in contemporary America is not between Democrats and Republicans, but rather between democracy and oligarchy. This distinction is critical, and it reframes the current crisis not as a matter of left versus right, but as a deeper and more dangerous erosion of democratic values and institutions. In this oligarchic framework, the state no longer serves as a neutral arbiter of public good. Instead, it becomes a tool through which private interests consolidate and extend their power. This results in policies that protect monopolies, that also erodes workers' protections, and also weaken regulatory agencies and sidelines the need of the majority. The government, rather than just being a reflection of the people's will, becomes a mechanism for managing dissent and also maintaining elite control. If left unchecked, the system could deepen political instability. It could also increase public disillusionment and also weaken the very foundations upon which the country was built. Also, did we forget the slaves that were transported from Africa? I don't want to get into details because YouTube has been demonetizing my content back to back like they're Drake, but you all know what I'm talking about. But anyways, however, recognizing the nature of the crisis is the first step towards change. By understanding the shift from democracy to oligarchy, people and citizens of America may begin to organize, they may begin to demand reform and also reassert their role when it comes to the governance of their own country. So now let's talk about the economic manifestation of oligarchic control. One of the most striking manifestations of oligarchic governance in the United States today is the escalation of the trade war with China, particularly under the current administration of Donald Trump. What began as a series of tariffs that was aimed at addressing concerns over trade imbalances has spiraled into one of the most significant protectionist actions in recent US history. Between January and April 2025, the US trade-weighted average tariff increased dramatically from a modest 2% to an estimated 24%, marking the highest tariff levels the country has ever seen in over a century. By April 9, 2025, tariffs on Chinese imports reached an astonishing 145%, an unprecedented escalation that has had sweeping economic consequences. The rapid systemic escalation of these trade policies started with President Trump's decision to implement a 10% baseline tariffs on all Chinese imports on February 1st, 2025. 2025. This added to the existing tariffs from his first term, which averaged around 20%. By early April 2025, Trump declared a national emergency over the trade deficit, extending tariffs to global imports and also imposing even higher tariffs on 57 countries. And this is a move that was described by Politico as the most significant US protectionist trade action since the 1930s, and this references the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Also, he gave this tariff to even the United Kingdom, saying that we have to start using chickens that have been washed with chlorine or chlorophyll. I think so, like chlorine or chlorophyll. And our prime minister said no, because the health of the public comes first before anything. Like literally, we get free healthcare in the country, so you want to kill, or not kill, but like you want the citizens to be harmed, and who does it fall back on? The government, literally. So the prime minister was like, no, we care about our citizens first. If not, they're going to improve the tariff. And we're like, no. And there's another video on TikTok that I've seen, not TikTok, like Instagram, and the person was like, the European Union has agreed to take Trump's condition, which is false. So people should also look out for people who just want to go viral, which is very, very false, like 100% false. Because when I saw that, I had to go and Google, and it's just 27 countries that have accepted. The European Union has not agreed to any Trump tariff. So I just want to put that out there, because people are on TikTok and on Instagram just spewing incorrect information. That's why it's good for you guys to, do your research, okay? Basically, I just wanted to put that out there because people are just spreading so much rumors just to go viral anyways. At face value, the policies were framed as a defense of American interests, particularly in terms of protecting jobs and also manufacturing sectors. However, an in-depth analysis has suggested that these measures, they primarily serve the interests of specific domestic industries that are closely tied to the oligarchic power structure, namely large corporations and influential business groups that benefit from these tariffs at the expense of the broader economy. In particular, consumers, they face the brunt of these trade policies with higher prices for imported goods and fewer choices that are available in the marketplace. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell acknowledged that the economic impact of these tariffs has been significantly larger than expected, warning of the potential consequences on American consumers who will likely experience inflationary pressures and a reduced standard of living as a result of these trade wars. While the trade war may ostensibly be about addressing trade imbalances or protecting American jobs, it just reveals a deeper pattern. Oligarchic elites are leveraging government power to protect their economic interests, often at the expense of ordinary citizens who bear the cost of higher consumer prices. So now let's talk about the luxury brand deception that has been exposed, which I'm so surprised that so many people are surprised that most things are made in China, if not everything are made in China. Like, not everything is made in China, but like most things are made in China. I was so surprised that Americans were so surprised. Like, this is why you guys need to do your research, travel. You don't even need to travel, like travel in books. Y'all are on TikTok all day. There's Google like things. Don't you guys like just think about strange random things on Google? Like, literally, am I the only person that does that? So the amount of people that are surprised that most things are made in China has me surprised, because I didn't think anyone would be surprised by that. But let's just get into it. Another example of how oligarchic system operates to maintain wealth and power is evident in the recent revelations within the luxury good industry. So basically here, the oligarchic control is exercised not only through financial influence, but also by manipulating the public perceptions of exclusivity and craftsmanship to justify inflated prices. Recent investigations and social media exposés from Chinese manufacturers have pulled back the curtain on a long-standing deceptive practice within the luxury brand sector. Content creators, particularly on platforms like TikTok, they've revealed that many of the high-end fashion items marketed as being designed designed and crafted in Europe are in fact manufactured in China at a fraction of the cost, and these products are then given European labels, making them appear as though they were crafted with an unparalleled skill and exclusivity in this country. So basically 90% of these products are allegedly done in China, and then just 10% maybe just to, put a stitch on, like, a little part of a handbag is done in Italy. And because that little thing is done, all of a sudden the marketers made in Italy, meanwhile in reality it was made in China. For example, a popular TikTok user exposed the fact that 80% of Gucci's products and over 60% of Prada's items are produced in China.
Some say as long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that. That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. Those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury. Now, close your eyes. Let's just do a little very easy experiment in your head, okay? Imagine that you have an Hermes bag, and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China, while everything else, like leathers, zippers, and hardware, remain the same. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those luxury brands for too long. Welcome to the real world. Now you see, those bags are made in China by our intelligent and diligent Chinese artisans. Let's not be poisoned and misled by the market campaign any longer, and be a real person. Buy a bag from us, from our factory in China. See the real world for yourself.
Do you know which Chinese supplier supplies Zara? Let me tell you. The Zara shoe supplier is Yuanli Tong Shoes. The Zara clothes supplier is Tongli Clothing. And it's also the OEM factory of HM. The Zara knitwear supplier is Wanli Weaving. If you want to get the similar quality of the brands, you can find their suppliers. Follow Jojo, I will share more sourcing tips.
This startling revelation was likened to pulling the curtain back in The Wizard of Oz, and this is a reference to how the perception of luxury is often based on carefully constructed myth rather than genuine craftsmanship. Consumers who buy into the illusion of Western-made exclusivity are essentially paying a premium for nothing more than a label, with the actual cost of production being much lower than the retail price. This deception is particularly significant given the shifting dynamics in the global luxury market. In 2024, the global luxury market experienced a 2% decline, and China's contribution to global luxury sales has dramatically plummeted from 50% a decade ago to just 12% today. Despite these changes, luxury brands, they continue to profit immensely by maintaining a narrative of exclusivity and rarity, one that obscures the true nature of their supply chain and the far more cost-effective production methods that they employ. This practice is emblematic of the oligarchic exploitation of consumer trust. By manufacturing a false narrative about the rarity of qualities of their product, these brands, they are able to charge enormous premium for that items that in reality are mass produced under conditions that are no different than many other products on the market. The oligarchic system just relies on such deceptions to maintain their control over creating artificial scarcity and value while diverting attention from the true nature of how these goods are indeed produced. So now let's talk about Nigerian leather and the myth of European craftsmanship.
A lot of people don't know Nigerian leather is some of the most valuable leather in the world. So for more than 500 years, Western traders have come to Timbuktu, Mali, and to Morocco to buy what today is known as Kano red leather. when we started exporting leather, or when we started producing leather locally, we found out that there was a huge market for exports, and then tapped into the export market. 30 years later, we're one of the biggest exporters in the country. So this was some of the inspiration behind Winston Leather, because we know that our leather is good enough to make bags and shoes for the biggest fashion houses in the world. So why can't we make it here in Africa? So we're doing made in Africa that can compete on a global level. So when you see a bag made in Nigeria now, and you see a bag that you were buying from any other country where you go shopping, it's the same. But because we don't have the middleman cost, we don't have the transport cost of taking it abroad, and the transport cost of bringing it back, it's cheaper to buy in Africa for the same quality. And it's been amazing. 3 years later, we export to 14 countries. We're going for trade fairs around the world. We're going for exhibitions around the world. And the world is accepting, we have great reception.
And yes, I had to give Nigeria a different subsection, its own subsection in this video, because in case you don't know, I'm not French as most people think I am. I am Nigerian. But the thing is, I think why people think I'm French is because my state kind of shares a border with Cameroon in Nigeria. So I think that's why people think I'm French. So we kind of share a border, so maybe they sound like I do. Because there's a Nigerian actress that is Cameroonian, and she kind of sounds like someone from my state. She has like the whole, accent that my state people do have, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, let's get into Nigerian leather and the myth of European craftsmanship. Deceptive practices in the luxury good industry has extended far beyond the location of production to include the sourcing of raw materials. One particularly striking example of this is the relationship between the luxury fashion brands and Nigerian leather. Many prestigious Italian and Spanish leather brands, often associated with European craftsmanship and exclusivity, actually sources a significant portion of their materials from tanneries in northern Nigeria. And this includes red Sokoto goat skin. So red Sokoto goat skin is a high quality leather that is globally recognized for its exceptional texture and durability. Despite its superior quality, the fact that many luxury brands rely on Nigerian leather remains largely concealed from consumers, and this further deepens the myth of European self-sufficiency when it comes to luxury material production.
Well, the thing about it is the leather doesn't come from Italy. It comes from Nigeria, northern Nigeria.
So everyone has been sending me this video because, my family make leather for a lot of the biggest fashion houses in the world, and it's absolutely true. In 30 years of making the best leather in the world, we have never gotten credit for the work we do. There has never been a brand we supply who ever came out to say, oh, I get my leather from Winston Leather in Nigeria. Hell, the concept of acknowledging that the raw material is African raw material is so foreign that even after legal action was taken and they got stopped from using the word Italian leather, they much rather call it genuine leather than Nigerian leather. And that just goes to show you how hell-bent these people are on not giving us our flowers. And that's the realization we made one day. And we decided to start our own company because you know what? We as Africans need to create more African brands, and we need to tell more African stories. We export cocoa, we import chocolates, we export crude oil, we import petroleum, we export leather, and we import shoes and bags. And so when someone else is making the final product with your raw material, then they get to put whatever credit they want on the label. So if we had more African brands, then we get to control the narrative, and that's the inspiration behind Winston Leather. So every time you wear one of our shoes or every time you carry one of our bags, you're not just carrying a beautiful piece, you're carrying the flowers of Africa.
Do you know that most of the leather used around the world actually comes from Africa? Yeah, your luxurious Italian leather handbag may have more Nigeria in it than Italy. In fact, African leather is highly sought after by fashion houses both within and outside of Africa, particularly in this African country right here. Made in Italy? Try made in Nigeria. Let's talk about it. although today 71% of leather produced in Nigeria is exported to Italy and Spain, the African origins of leather, particularly within the luxury industry, have long flown under the radar. For example, this tannery right here, based in Kano, Nigeria, supplies leather to fashion houses like Louis Vuitton and Ralph Lauren, to name a few. This family-run business, Winston Leather, has effectively been supplying some of the biggest names in fashion for over 30 years. You see, in Nigeria, leather making has a long and storied history. For over 500 years, traders have bought leather from this West African country. It's been a center of leather production for years. Within northern Nigeria, one particular city stands out: Kano. Traditional tanneries in Kano are Nigeria's oldest and biggest leather suppliers. They are, and always have been, the starting point in many leather-producing chains. See, among the Hausa Fulani people of northern Nigeria, leather served a functionality. It was essential to the production of clothing, footwear, bags, and saddles for transportation and trade. Hides and skins from free-roaming cows, goats, or sheep were taken, and skilled artisans, who often belonged to specialized guilds, would transform them into leather through a process called leather tanning. And before you come screaming about animal cruelty, at the time and still in many African communities, all parts of the animal were used. As a source of food, architecture, clothing, nothing was thrown away. The skill and knowledge of these artisans was passed down through generations, perfected over centuries, and today many of those traditional techniques are still in use. But while leather has traditionally been used to make practical products, it's also deeply intertwined with Nigerian cultural identity and constitutes a visible form of cultural expression. For example, in Igbo culture, leather is used to make Igbo akube, a traditional leather hand fan, and in Yoruba culture, leather work is used in some ritual objects like the lapa. It's always had many uses and has always been highly sought after, which is probably why on the global stage, Nigerian leather has evolved to a symbol of luxury and high fashion. Now, that's not to say that the industry doesn't face issues. There are problems related to infrastructure, financing, and competition from imported goods. Made in Africa still doesn't have the same ring to it as made in Europe. But African designers are working to change that. Brands such as these are switching the narratives, and initiatives like the Lagos Leather Fair have brought smaller designers to the forefront and really showcase Nigeria's beautiful leather craftsmanship. There's really no need to look far. Beauty has always been found within the continent. We just need to foster it.
So one thing you guys don't know is that Nigerian leather industry employs over 750,000 workers and processes leather from approximately 124 million goats and sheep annually, raised by around 16.6 million agricultural households. Despite this vast production, an estimated 90% of leather produced in Nigeria is exported rather than being used domestically. This reality starkly contrasts with the image that European luxury brands have cultivated over the years. And what's this image they've cultivated over the years? This image is the image of self-reliance, high quality, locally sourced materials. The use of Nigerian leather in luxury good production exposes the contradiction within the narrative of European exclusivity, shining a light on the global supply that consumers are so unaware of. So that brings us to our next subtopic: oligarchic control and the myth of exclusivity. The disconnection between marketing narratives and actual production realities serves as an illustration of how oligarchic economic system manipulates information to maintain control over pricing and wealth. Luxury brands, many of which are controlled by conglomerates, depend on information that are used to sustain artificially inflated price points. By obscuring the origins of materials and the real production processes, these companies, they preserve a narrative of scarcity, ensuring that consumers, they continue to pay a premium for goods that are not as unique or as rare as they seem. In a globalized economy, it is not surprising that raw materials are sourced from countries with lower production costs. However, the key issues lies with how this information is hidden from the consumer. The narrative that luxury goods are crafted in Europe fosters an elite aura around brands brands like Gucci and Prada, crafting an image of unmatched quality and craftsmanship, where in fact much of the actual work is done far from the European continent. This manipulation of perception just allows luxury conglomerates and luxury brands to continue charging exorbitant prices, while the actual workers involved in leather production, as those in northern Nigeria, are left poorly compensated despite their critical role in the supply chain. Have you guys noticed when it comes to China, people are like, oh, everything from China is fake. Meanwhile, they actually produce all these things in China. So in my own opinion, these luxury goods, what do? They act like everything is done in European countries, and then they try to make the rest of the people, that's the consumers, see places like China, places like Nigeria as like a place for counterfeit, and not only counterfeit, like fake counterfeit. Where does iPhone come from? Where does iPhone come from? It comes from America. Okay, but where are the products being sourced from? Sourced from Congo. Literally, that's why there's a whole war in Congo, because that's a story for another day, which I hope YouTube allows me to talk about it, because oh my god, YouTube has been censoring me a lot that I don't even know what I'm putting that is not it. But anyways, one thing we should know is that the control that has been exerted by a small number of wealthy people and corporations in the luxury industry exemplifies the larger oligarchic system that has dominated the global economy. By maintaining a deceptive narrative or tale that ties the value of their products to European craftsmanship, luxury brands, they ensure that their profit remains concentrated at the top of the supply chain. The reality is that the true value of this product lies not in the Western made label, but in the raw materials that have been sourced from places like northern Nigeria. So the states in northern Nigeria that mostly source leathers are like places like Kano, Sokoto, Jos, even Kaduna. All these places are in the north. Even I would like to say Abuja, but Abuja, in case you do not know, is the capital of Nigeria, not Lagos. It's Abuja. So I would like to say Abuja, but I'm not sure because Abuja is not really big. But I'm looking at Sokoto, Kano, Kaduna. Those are mostly, and Jos. Those are, and Jos is Nasarawa. So literally, those are the 4 states in Nigeria that I'm very sure outsource this. And in case you guys do not know, animals like cows and goats and sheep are mostly bred by people in northern Nigeria. Even people like, even I live in the south, I'm from the south, I run the south, so I'm from the south. So basically, most people that sell goats and cows are mostly northern Nigerians. They come down and they sell, and like most times on the streets you see them like with their cows just holding the animals and just taking the animals on a stroll or a walk. So like when it comes to like animals and like, you know, all type of animals, it's mostly the north that actually rules it. And again, this perpetuates a system where wealth is extracted from low income countries only to be concentrated in the hands of elite owners of luxury brands. Furthermore, the myth of European craftsmanship does not just allow luxury brands to continue and to maintain high profit margins, it also sustains the broader oligarchic system. This disguised exploitation of Nigerian leather suppliers contributes to this wealth transfers, with local producers receiving a fraction of the value that their materials generate in international markets. So now let's talk about the inevitable decline of oligarchic system. Oligarchic system by their very nature carries inherent weaknesses that lead to their eventual deterioration and collapse. As political theorists Robert Michaels and others have noted, oligarchies are designed to extract wealth from the lower levels of society and concentrate it at the top. This extraction mechanism ultimately weakens the social and economic foundations of a system that creates an increasingly brittle society. Over time, this concentration of power stifles adaptation and innovation, creating internal pressures that eventually leads to systemic breakdown. In this research, Sir Colin Renfrew, he identified consistent patterns across 26 different social collapses, ranging from the fall of the Roman Empire to the decline of the Soviet Union. These patterns, they include the growing social stratification and the breakdown of common cultural frameworks. It also includes the inability to adapt to changing conditions. These factors are hallmarks of rigid oligarchic system and are observable when it comes to the contemporary societies that exhibit significant equality and power concentration. As social tension rise, it becomes increasingly clear that the system is no longer capable of responding effectively to the needs of the majority. The United States is now showing several indicators of potential oligarchic collapse. One major sign is the increasingly overt nature of oligarchic control. While wealth and power once operated through subtle mechanisms and behind-the-scenes influence, the current administration has brought billionaire dominance into the open. Billionaire people like Elon, like Jeff Bezos, and also Mark Zuckerberg are now openly involved in governance, and they've undermined the narrative that the US is a democracy that's been driven by the will of the people. The visibility of the oligarchic control erodes the legitimacy of the system, as it has become evident that the powerful people and the powerful few are shaping the future of the nation rather than the citizens. And who can remember when I spoke about my Mark Zuckerberg video, how he said that he was going to tell Donald Trump to speak to the European Union to make Instagram and Facebook more Americanized. I'm just using my words for Europe. One thing these people should know, like, your power does not open so many gates when it comes to a country or countries that are standing together. Like countries in Europe, the UK, they're no longer under the European Union, but like countries in Europe like New Zealand, do you think New Zealand is going to neglect their citizens for you? Do you think the Icelandic country, I don't know if they're under European Union, do you think they're going to neglect their citizens for you? Those are countries. Do you think Germany will neglect their citizens for you? Those are countries that really look out for their citizens, and those are countries that put their citizens first before any billionaire. Literally, do you think they will neglect their citizens for you? We understand America may do that, but like most of these European countries, they don't do shit like that. They really do not. That's why most of these billionaires are like so out of touch with reality. I think that the world just revolves around them, and the world should open whenever they walk, like literally. Another indicator of this decline is the exposure of manufacturing deceptions within the luxury industry. As Chinese manufacturers, they reveal the true origins of the product that have been marketed as exclusively European. Consumers are just questioning the values of these items and the associated price premiums. The rise of social media platforms like TikTok has allowed this information to spread quickly, challenging the narratives that have justified oligarchic profits in luxury goods market. Lastly, the escalating trade war with China, while initially strengthening American oligarchic control, may have, unexpectedly accelerated the system collapse by disrupting global supply chains and also increasing consumer costs. That's why Apple had to fly to China to pick up the iPhone themselves. The smooth Howey Tariff Act of 1930s also serves as a reminder of how protectionist policies can backfire, leading to the long-term economic instability and even global conflict. In conclusion, America's oligarchic system is approaching a critical juncture. It's approaching a juncture where the contradictions within the system may either lead to a reform or to a collapse. The increasing transparency of oligarchic control, alongside the exposure of deceptive luxury manufacturing practices, suggests that the oligarchic system may be losing its ability to maintain public legitimacy. Simultaneously, extreme trade policies and growing economic tension, they threaten to disrupt the economic system, potentially accelerating the decline of the oligarchic dominance. Historically, oligarchic systems, they eventually face a breaking point, and the challenge for America today is whether emerging populist movements can channel the public frustration into constructive reform, or whether the discontent will continue in deeper economic collapse or authoritarian rule. The path forward will likely hinge on the ability to rebalance economic power and address the wealth concentration that has defined modern American oligarchy. What is clear is that the current system is unsustainable, and a transformation, whether through reform or collapse, is inevitable. And guys, that brings us to the end of this video. If you reach the end, kindly like, share, subscribe if you care, and thank you so much. Please share this video. Let's reach 1 million views, because that's our goal for 2025, 1 million views on a single video. So thank you guys so much for stopping by. If you reach the end of this video, drop a money emoji, a money sign. Okay, thank you guys so much.